On November 13th, 1967, the Indiana Pacers were taking on the Dallas Chaparrals in an ABA clash, and with 1 second left on the clock, and the Pacers were down 116 to 118, and they threw the ball to Jerry Harkness, who gave a last-second heave from 92 feet away, sinking the shot, giving the Pacers the win, 119 to 118. Today we're going to dive into how this happened and how hard is it to make these full court shots and why this record will never be broken. Today on Daily Sports History. Welcome to Daily Sports History. I'm Ethan Reese, your guide as you daily learn more about sports history, increasing your sports knowledge. As today we learn about the full court shot. And today's trivia question to listen out for is, what is the longest shot ever made in an NBA game? So to start this topic, we first need to know about the dimensions of the court. Now, the dimensions of a professional basketball court are 94 feet long and 50 feet wide. Now, that's the same in the NCAA, but high school is about 10 feet shorter, but the same width across. Now, when basketball was first created by James Naismith, he didn't put in any of the rules how big the size needed to be. If you know anything about his rules that he first created, it didn't matter how many players were on the team. It didn't matter where you played, just that you had a hoop and a ball. And those were the main basics. So you could play this game anywhere. You played outside, you played inside, you have a short ceiling, a tall ceiling. It didn't matter. It was just to play. But as the game continued to grow, in 1924, they officially named the size of a court to be a maximum of 90 feet by 50 feet and a minimum of 60 feet. And back then, they didn't have a three, they didn't have a key, free throw lines came in later. So really, the size was kind of in flux. But over the years, they played around with what would be the best fit as they went down to just 5 players per game, and they started a key and a free throw line. They needed to be more uniform as they played, and as they started to have more leagues. And then the NBA started, then they made their dimensions standard. And when the ABA started up, they also took those dimensions. Although they started with a 3-point line, which made it even more interesting. And this is why the Pacers were actually able to win that game against Dallas in 1967. See, 1967 was actually the first year the ABA started. And we actually have a previous episode talking about how the ABA actually got started. In that year, the league consisted of a total of 11 teams, 5 in the East and 6 in the West. And Dallas was in the West, and the Pacers were in the East. So this was an East versus West challenge. And Dallas was actually one of the better teams in the league. Although both teams made it to the playoffs, the Pacers had a losing record that year, and Dallas had won 46 games, finishing second in the West. In that season, Dallas had 2 All-Stars on their team in Cliff Hagan and John Beasley. And the Pacers actually had 3 on their roster in Roger Brown, Mel Daniels, and Bobby Nitolicki. Although in this game, Mel Daniels would not play. And the Pacers' leading scorer was Freddie Lewis. And coming into this game, the Pacers were actually a very strong team, as they were 12-3. But with the injury to Mel Daniels, it caused them to have a tougher later part of the season. And Dallas was only 4-5. And the game pretty much was dominated by Dallas's Cliff Hagan and Bobby Varga, who each scored over 30 points in this game. But the Pacers were able to keep it close, as every one of their starters scored in double figures. But it was a guy off the bench that would make history on this day. And that was Jerry Harkness, who was born in Harlem, but showed great promise in basketball, as New York was a great basketball scene back in the day. And he was able to join the Loyola Chicago basketball team, where he was an All-American and a captain when they won the national championship in 1963. And they actually this team actually went up against Mississippi State, which was known as the Game of Change, because Loyola started 4 black players against Mississippi State, who was a segregated team and wouldn't even play a game against black players until this moment. And there's actually a famous photo of Jerry shaking the hand of Joe Dan Gold. Now, this was just the second round of the NCAA, so it wasn't the championship, which is why Texas Western gets more of the publicity because it was for a national championship and it was against a powerhouse in Kentucky. But this was a pivotal moment as it was the first time Mississippi State was playing black players at a time in the 1960s, which is hard to fathom to us nowadays as the game has changed and the world has changed. And they eventually went against the Cincinnati Bearcats, and all the starting five of Loyola played the entire championship game, upsetting the Cincinnati Bearcats and winning their first national title. After this, he would get drafted by the New York Knicks as the number 10th pick overall in the 1963 NBA draft. And Harkness played one season with them before joining the Twin City Sailors of the NABL, which was a short-lived NBA competitor that played for 4 seasons. Then after this, he joined the Indiana Pacers of the ABA, where he would play 2 more seasons. But he was never a star on any of these teams. He was always just kind of a backup player, a guy that came off the bench to help support the team as much as he could. And that's what his role was with the Indiana Pacers. He was a backup player, but he had to play a little bit more, especially in this game without Milt Daniels. They needed some great They needed players to help compete. And as the game came close to an end, Jerry was out there helping lead the team. And at the time, he only scored one other basket that entire game. He wasn't a huge scorer as he only averaged 7 points in his entire career. But being down 2 points with 1 second left, there wasn't very many options. And so the Pacers passed the ball into Harkins, and he just threw up a Hail Mary towards the goal. It hit the backboard and went in. And even though they were playing this game in Dallas, the crowd of 2,500 erupted as it was a crazy thing that no one had ever seen before, a shot that long. Now, full court shots had happened before, but it was just a crazy moment. And if they were playing in the NBA at that time, it just would have tied it. But because he was in the ABA, they already had a 3-point line, which gave them 3 points and gave them the win, 119 to 118. And this was such a new thing as the league was so new and the 3-point shot was so new. The team actually didn't celebrate that much. They were happy, they were excited, but they got together in a huddle getting ready for overtime. And then the official came over to them and said, "No, the game is over. That was a 3-point shot." And Jerry didn't even know it was a 3-point shot. He was ready to go into overtime, but it was an exciting moment. And over the years, as the ABA became joined with the NBA, there have been some long shots made. And there have been roughly 10 shots made that were over 70 feet. So that's in the history of the NBA. It's always a last-second thing, usually the end of a quarter or the end of a game, but it can still be very exciting. And the longest there's ever been was in the NBA was by Baron Davis, who was part of the Charlotte Hornets taking on the Milwaukee Bucks when he hit an 89-yard shot, which he threw like a football. And not only did he make it, it was nothing but net. It was a crazy shot that happened in 2001. And the longest shot ever in an NBA playoff game was Magic Johnson, where the Lakers were taking on the Denver Nuggets in 1987, where he hit an 84-foot shot. Now, the longest basketball shot ever made in any kind of form, now this wouldn't be legal in the NBA because it's too long, was made in 2002 of a distance of 112 feet, made by Elan Bowler. And, of course, in this day and age where we all love these trick shots, Dude Perfect actually holds a record for the tallest shot, where they shot from 855 feet up in the air to make one shot that took over 4 days to sink. These shots are all fun, and we love the opportunity to see these shots be made, especially at the end of games like Jerry's was. It's a great honor that he has to have the longest shot ever, but just like a lot of other games from the 60s, including Wilt Chamberlain's 100-point game, we don't actually have any proof this happened other than reports and people there. There is no pictures, no film. It was just a memory for everyone there and something we just all have to imagine. And if you want more Pacers content, check out the UndeBeatables, where they take you through everything you need to know about the Pacers, including recaps and all the news going on in and around the Pacers. We'll put a link in the description below for you to check them out so you can get all your Pacers content, and maybe hit a full court shot on your next podcast selection. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a rating or a review wherever you're listening. And if you put a topic in that review, we will get that done just for you. And come back tomorrow for more daily sports history. And did you catch the answer to today's trivia question? What is the longest shot in NBA history? And the answer is 89 feet, done by Byron Davis in 2001.